Thank you. It's a great honor to be a Catchlight Fellow. Thank you all for coming and hearing all of our stories. It's wonderful to be up here and just like I said, an honor to be up here with Carlos and Ada and Shaidul. So thank you all for being here. So in Iraq, in 2004, the first person to ask me what the word democracy means was a prostitute. Paula styled herself from posters of Britney Spears, and she became a prostitute to support her 2 kids after her civilian husband died in 2003, the result of a US bomb. I answered her by mentioning ideas from the Bill of Rights, but since then, the questions haunted me. For me, the Iraq War was the start of almost 15 years documenting revolutions, failed governments, and war around the world. Here, in the days just after the fall of Baghdad, a Marine threatens a man who was robbing a bank. And here, on a rooftop, I was watching with a family in Gaza, watching bombs fall, shaking the cement from beneath me. And here, Afghan women line up to vote for the first time in 2004. I watched US and NATO forces push the word democracy in Iraq and Afghanistan and many places in the world. And here, the intimacy and love that exists no matter which side of a war one finds themselves on. This was taken at a funeral for a Syrian soldier in Assad's army. My goal in covering conflict has always been to get my viewers to relate to cultures much different from their own, to connect people through the human experience. I started a photo column in the Washington Post in 2008 and thought about my readers, people in Washington, D.C., walking to their office after battling traffic, or even the President of the United States, and wrote about Qasem Ali and his Monday morning commute to work in Baghdad. Or Susan Abdul-Jabbar, the youngest daughter, traveled with her 16-month-old daughter Miriam from Kirkuk to her husband's home, which is her husband's home, to her home in the town of Ramadi. It was her first time back in 2 years, and she was pregnant again, a reason to celebrate. And in Baghdad, girls take their final exams to the sound of helicopters in a sweltering school lacking electricity. A dust storm, best friends who are told to come home before the streetlights come on, something my mom used to tell me when growing up in small towns across the US. After documenting revolutions and war, seeing countries like Liberia or Mexico use the word democracy to define heavily corrupt governments where votes may count, but results are often preordained, I decided to return to the United States to document our society's connection to this widely used, often misunderstood concept, to find a better answer than the definition I gave Hala years ago. One aspect I've followed is the non-voter. In recent midterm elections, a majority of Americans did not vote. Some 60% of eligible voters stayed home. In El Paso, Texas, is one such place. Here, over 1,000 Mexicans cross the US border legally every morning to go to work or school. They said many people don't vote in El Paso because they feel the city is a liberal island, drowned out by the rest of conservative Texas. Here, students in El Paso pledge allegiance to the US flag. Most are US citizens living across the border in Juarez. In rural, coastal North Carolina, I follow the working class, farmers, hunters. The state is heavily Republican, but their beliefs don't always run along party lines. Many are pro-NRA, but they also know nature, environmentalists in a traditional, very real way. They believe in climate change. The town of Warner Robins, Georgia, has a motto. Every day in Middle Georgia is Armed Forces Appreciation Day, or IMGAFAD. MGFAD is painted on water towers, murals, advertised with local businesses. It's an interesting motto for one of the places in the US with the lowest voter turnout. On the north side of Warner Robins, churches are everywhere. I attended the Agape Outreach Ministry Sunday service. Though it wasn't full, it was full of life. And it was their place of community. It was their democracy, they said. With this grant from the Catchlight Foundation, our team is traveling across the United States, asking people what democracy means to them on a local level, while documenting it in action or inaction. Because if we don't have a mutual understanding of this word, a word that many people would die for, how will we know if it disappears? While working in Iraq or Afghanistan, in places where cultures seem dramatically different, I was hyper-aware of avoiding cliches. I depended on fixers and translators, drivers, and the general public there to make sure I was representing their lives appropriately. I'm sure I didn't always succeed, but I was aware of the problem and the divisions simplistic cliches create to our readers in the States. But while covering the United States, my home country, I could clearly see journalists, including myself, relying on cliches rather than digging deeper into the complexities of real life. This was especially true in coal country in Virginia. Here, rotting kudzu covers much of Buchanan County, Virginia, giving a visual sense of being forgotten, which is how many described their place in the nation. And representing poverty in Appalachia can be problematic, but it also can't be ignored. And it's one of the questions and one of the issues that we wrestled with when in Appalachia. In Memphis, I spent time with this couple who are members of a notorious gang in Memphis. The gang has a leader who enforces school attendance, good grades, and helps families in need. In a city known for inequality and racism, it raises interesting questions about what happens and who steps in when the system fails those living in our democracy. In Indiana, I shot the 2018 midterm elections in towns where polling stations had very few booths and very few voters. In San Francisco, we follow the enormous class divide and the unintended influences of the tech world, a city inside the city living in cars and mobile homes, organizations like City Hope providing services for the homeless, and to the frozen land of New Hampshire for their town meeting season, an example of direct democracy in the United States. The pride in their active political community was apparent, though in a place where 98% of the population is white. In the live free or die state, most people feel they have a voice in their local community, and their involvement was, to me, inspiring. This is one town hall meeting in a small town in New Hampshire, voting. My images are just part of this project, and this is where I and the Our Democracy team have left traditional journalism in search of something more, something to bring us closer to the truth behind different communities. We held what we call democracy dinners. In these locations, we recorded often heated debates on what democracy means and what it looks like in the US today. Here, we are in San Francisco. Each location we visit begins with a discussion in schools and community organizations. During the presentation, I share a bit of my own past and what I've covered overseas. Then I start a discussion about their own community and their place in it, engaging the community and educating them on the role of journalism. In most of these communities, most people haven't even met a journalist. So introducing them to us was kind of pulling back the curtain. And here, in New Hampshire, a Vietnam veteran uses photos from his tour to describe what he believes democracy to mean. We sometimes do small workshops and including writing workshops to get people to present their own work and their own ideas. And I'm not alone. We have a great team. This is Lorraine Ustaris, who has a teaching background, is also the videographer, recording the voices behind all the stories and the presentations and discussions. Many in the community then contribute to our Instagram feed at Our Democracy. And what does democracy look like? Where does it exist? Where does it succeed or fail in your life? These photos were taken with our phones, so the resolution is often relatively small for such a big screen. Here, Brick Resnick talked about democracy as a feeling of community, being neighborly. And here, Dylan Levi described democracy as the freedom to believe in what he wants to believe, even the Confederate flag. And here, a quilt that was made by Deanna Dale and her grandparents. She mentioned family values and community again. This image is from a former convict in Memphis. Since his conviction, he no longer has the right to vote, though he's served his time. It's a state law. He photographed here a friend tying a homeless man's shoe. He stated that there was no democracy, no equality in the US. And here, a student in North Carolina took photos of a prayer service for school shooting victims as his idea of democracy. Again, comes back to community for so many people. And this project is also personal for me. After living abroad for over a decade, I've come home and I gave birth to a baby girl. Now 5 months old, my attempt to combine work and family, I'm bringing my daughter and my mom along on this exploration of democracy in the United States. As I seek a deeper understanding of the United States on a local scale, how we participate in democracy, whether it works, I'm introducing my daughter to a world that will affect her future directly. And that's all. Hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.